Okay, so first of all, I want to congratulate on your movie.
Thank you.
And you need to tell me the title because I don't remember the English title. Go ahead.
Anemone.
Anemone.
Yeah, yes.
Anemone, okay.
Yeah.
Ronan Day-Lewis, I'm so glad to have a chance to talk to you about this movie. It's your debut, it's your first movie with your father. So I think it's very emotional movie for you because it's like a family movie.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's definitely, it's interesting. Like we wrote it together, my dad and I wrote it together. We kind of started both from the point of view of more wanting to explore the brotherhood aspect of it and the kind of, that archetype of kind of siblinghood and just the beauty and tragedy in that. But, the father-son thread of the story kind of crept up on us more as Brian became less of a kind of peripheral character and started to actually open up his point of view in the film. So yeah, it's interesting. Like it was all very kind of unconscious the way it came together.
But what was the process of this screenplay? Your father came to you and he said, "Oh, we should make a movie together," or it was your idea?
Yeah, well, it was like he did come to me saying he wanted that we should try to find something to, just work on together in a really low stakes way. Like originally we actually thought maybe it would be, we didn't know what the finished form would be. We just knew we wanted to try to find some way to kind of collaborate in like a really pure way on something. But before that, for years, actually, I'd independently had this idea of wanting to do something about brothers. And like I have brothers, and it was just something that I felt like I felt like there was like a really potent kind of well there that could be mined. And I wasn't sure what the best way into it was. Like at first I was kind of thinking of it as potentially like a coming of age type story or something that was more kind of literally in line with my experience. But then after my dad came to me with the idea of us finding something to do together, it turned out that he independently also had been wanting to do something about brothers. So that became kind of the seed for us once we realized that. A couple of years after we'd had that initial conversation about working together. And then we were actually just in the same place for a few months, just in the house together. And we started just kind of bouncing ideas back and forth. And I had like a Google Doc that I was just kind of writing fragments down in, and it just started to slowly kind of build up. The ideas just started to compile, and we arrived at this kind of basic scenario of just this guy who's living in a state of kind of self-banishment in the middle of nowhere. And we weren't sure exactly like at first why he was in that position or what he had done or what had happened to him to kind of excise him from society. But we knew that he was at the beginning of the story, his estranged brother, who he hasn't seen in 20 years, shows up at his doorstep for mysterious reasons. And that was kind of it. And then it was just kind of following them into the dark, which was very different actually from my experiences on writing other scripts where I'd gone in with like a very detailed outline and you had like this roadmap of where we were going. But this was very like character led, and we did a lot of improvisation and stuff. And yeah, it was very much just like these two guys in a shed and just seeing where they took us.
Did your father want to come back from retirement, or he was just he wanted to make a movie with you especially?
Yeah, it was with me especially. Like it was because at first we weren't even sure if it would see the light of day. Honestly, like we didn't know if it would actually materialize into a full feature script, and even if it did, we weren't sure how we would actually execute it or what the finished form would be really. So there wasn't that much, like at first there wasn't that much talk about him coming out of retirement. And then as we started working, the idea was always that he would act in it, like that he would be one of those brothers. But as the script started to kind of assume form, I think it reached a point where we both were like, oh, okay, this feels like it's becoming something real. And then we started having more conversations about like what the implications of that would be. Like if it did eventually turn into a full feature that we felt strong about, like, then would we actually go out and try to do it? But that conversation is almost like we were like, that was sort of the elephant in the room for a while, because we were working in such a low stakes way, like, and very just incrementally over like 4 years. So for a long time, it was really just like we had 20 pages and 30 pages and 40. It just very slowly kind of crept up on us. Whenever we were together, we would write a few more scenes or.
So you were witnessing your father building roles. He's a method actor. As a child, you saw when he was creating all his great performance, and now you had to direct your own father. What is the difference between watching him preparing to the part, like just like a son, you know, when you were watching this, and watching this as a director?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like growing up, his work and his process was always this kind of almost like magician's like mystery to me. Like I would be aware of it, but he a lot of his work he would do kind of in solitude and just, you know, thinking and reading and doing all the things he needed in terms of preparation. But yeah, to start to see that from like a really intimate vantage point was kind of surreal and amazing at the beginning of the writing stage, because it was also kind of a unique experience from his point of view that he was directly involved in the script from the beginning. Because usually, I mean, he would be involved, like, you know, very involved in the script, but he would come on when there was already something there. Whereas in this, it was like the character was kind of forming around him as we were writing. So I would start to see like Ray kind of appear from very early on in him and in these kind of improvisations he would do. And it was really thrilling. But we worked on the script for long enough that it became really kind of, by the time we came to shoot it, like I was so used to that, and we had such a kind of shorthand, like from playing out these scenes together and having all these really detailed conversations about, you know, the character and about the whole, you know, every aspect of his world and the whole journey, that it felt very, there was a moment when we first got on set where it was like, it was kind of strange, and I was like, this is, you know, to be in that director's role with him. But we quickly kind of slid into this rhythm with it that I think was really helped by the writing process.
But was he like talking to you with his voice of the character, even, you know, at home or when you were preparing?
When we were preparing, not so much. He would kind of slip into Ray, like, you know, just for pockets of time, you know, he would talk as Ray, you know, when we were figuring out these scenes. But then it was, at a certain point, like leading up to production, he did full on just go into that. And it was, then throughout the whole shoot, he was Ray the whole time.
Well, when I was watching this movie, I was wondering, you know, about the whole emotional process of this movie, because it has so many layers, you know, it's about trauma, it's about history of Northern Ireland, and about fatherhood. So this is something what is really, I think, emotional for you two guys who are making this kind of movie. No, definitely. I think it's like family in general is just such a rich kind of substrate for drama and for stories, and I think that even though there's nothing like expressly autobiographical in the film, like when the character of Brian became like a real person at some point in the script, because at first he was more just a kind of periphery, I started to really understand the film in a different way, and it became more personal to me, because I feel like I could kind of understand that conundrum he has of this kind of fascination with your parents' past life, even though in my case, like I'm really close with both my parents, and like you know, it's not like the absent father thing wasn't in any way autobiographical, but that kind of mystery of like who these people are, you know, outside of their role as your parent, and that kind of, you know, who they were before you existed was something that was like really fascinating to me. Weren't you afraid of this kind of movie? You know, this kind of story, this kind of tale? Because I was working on it with my dad. Because of the family ties.
Not really. I think because it really, like, again, kind of crept up on us. Like, it wasn't something going in that was like a kind of a thesis that we had like when we started writing. So it was like, I think if that had been the case, I probably would have psyched myself out more. But it was just such a slow process, that aspect of the story kind of materializing, that like by the time it was there, it felt like it had just grown out of the scenario and like the characters in this kind of natural way. So it was, I think it did. There was a moment where I started to realize that aspect of it did give it this kind of meta quality that I hadn't like really anticipated, and that was kind of exciting to me in a way. Like it felt like it made it more personal and more specific rather than us coming together and making something that was just like a totally random, that had nothing to do with father sons or had nothing to do with family. I guess it felt like it was it felt like the right thing for us to do together, I guess, if we were to work together.
And you're like, it's your first movie, and you're directing two great actors, Sean Bean and Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. I had grown up watching Sean's work since I was a kid, and starting from like Game of Thrones, and was just I was pretty starstruck. And once I started imagining him as Jem, I couldn't really imagine anyone else. So I was really thrilled that he was the first person we went out to, and I was really thrilled that he connected to it. And he was just amazing to work with. Like, so him and my dad had very different processes, but once they got on set together, there was this real kind of alchemy between them, where you just totally believed that they were siblings in terms of their just these. Even more so, like, but between the dialogue, like between the lines, just these kind of micro tremors in their dynamic, and these constantly shifting kind of power dynamics, and so a lot of what Sean had to do in the film was basically just listening, and so that was to me just like such a masterclass, like watching him just experience his, like, this guy who he used to know so clearly, so deeply, but is like kind of a enigma to him now, and he's kind of in almost like a torture chamber at times. So it was amazing to see how much he was able to do just with like silence.
So it's a family story. It's a story about trauma, but it's also a story about Ireland, RAA. Then you have a Catholic Church, and the problem, you went to a Catholic school, so it's personal to you in this matter. Yeah,
in a way it was. I wasn't thinking about that honestly when that aspect of it first appeared in the script. But I think that having grown up in Ireland, like the connection I had to the place, and just having learned about like the troubles in school growing up, definitely gave me like a fascination with that history, and I think we felt like we'd seen this story represented in many ways, like from a different vantage point, and so we thought it'd be really interesting to have a story that was, not from the perspective of the oppressor in any way, but about someone who was employed by the oppressor, what you could call the oppressor in that situation, England, and just see, take a look at that conflict in more of a kind of almost like a bird's eye way, where it's looking at war from the perspective of almost like nature, or like, the wind and the trees, which are kind of a constant like participant in the story. So yeah, it was definitely like a complex thing to approach, and I was definitely concerned about trying to make sure that the film's perspective never felt entwined with the perspective of the oppressor.
It is very interesting to me because I'm a graduate in theology.
Oh, wow.
So the whole concept of redemption is very interesting. Because in one way, you can call this movie anti-clerical in a way, because it shows the sins of the institution of church.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have this very, very deep redemption in the movie. So this is the part of the story also.
That's it's interesting because it's on the one hand, kind of, as you say, like denounces organized religion in a pretty intense way, but then I also think of it as a really spiritual film, like not necessarily a religious film, but very, very spiritual. But I think that the most spiritual encounters in the film are almost more like a pagan kind of something that eludes like classification, I guess, in terms of some of the experiences that Ray has over the course of the film. So it's interesting. I guess I've also just always been really fascinated with Christian imagery and biblical imagery, even though I'm not I wasn't raised with any specific religion, but as you said, I went to Catholic school, and those images, I think, were always something that were kind of embedded in my subconscious.
I think that this is very similar about Irish people and Polish people.
Yeah.
That Catholicism and Catholic Church is very important to us culturally, not
Yeah.
only in a religious way.
Yeah.
So maybe you can't understand people in Ireland without the perspective of Catholic Church.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because it's beyond. I mean, it's kind of woven into the cultural fabric in that way, and I think it's. I don't know. It's interesting. Like when I was growing up there, I moved there when I was 7, so I had already grown up for a time in the States. So I always felt a little bit outside of it. I think in a way, like the culture and just the practice of Catholicism, like in the schools I was in growing up there. So. But I think that actually gave me kind of a deeper like fascination with it, because I felt like I was really like, when we would, the rituals of prayer and these different things that weren't a given for me growing up until that point kind of became something that I was like hyper aware of or something. Yeah.
And it is also a movie about the war. Now we have a war in Ukraine, we have a war in Middle East, like always. So in a universal way, this movie shows the killing of the innocence of this world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like among other things, I definitely think of it as an anti-war film, and it was, and I guess like that the question in the film is whether the natural, like there's always the kind of the wind and the processes of the natural world kind of happening in the backdrop of this human drama that's revealing itself in the human kind of strife and like bloodshed of war. And so it sort of feels like it's questioning whether nature is and just the natural world is indifferent to that suffering, or if there's like some kind of higher power that's reactive to it and that's observing it. And that felt like kind of an important question, I guess, of the film.
So a lot of layers. Well, I'm waiting for the movie for the premiere in Poland. So thank you very much for the movie.
And
thank you
for the
interview.
It's a great chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.